So I'm going to be talking about something that I found quite interesting, and it was to do with football stadiums in England and how they served purposes other than football during World War II and World War One. The first stadium that I'll talk about is Arsenal Football Club, and their stadium Highbury. Highbury was used in the Second World War, which I thought was quite interesting, as a base for training people for first aid, and it had a title Air Raid Preparedness Training Base. So basically, people would get sent there to be trained up on how to help their local communities be prepared in case of an air raid. So that was quite a unique fact about Highbury. Unfortunately, Arsenal moved from Highbury and they built a new stadium a few years ago now, but not all of that history was lost because Highbury was turned into a block of apartments. So, people still live where something historical took place. Arsenal's biggest rivals, North London Derby, Tottenham Hotspur, they also gave up their ground, well, part of their ground during World War II to be used as a morgue. So the Blitz bombings that covered England and largely attacked London killed a lot of people, and these two stadiums were right in the heart of the communities inside the housing estates. And so those bodies that were pulled from the buildings after the bombings were taken to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, called White Hart Lane, and they were kept in there until they were buried. Again, like Arsenal, unfortunately they've expanded and they have now built a new stadium, but their stadium is on the same site as the original White Hart Lane. Two stadiums that were used for slightly different purposes were Preston North End in the north of England. Their stadium was called Deepdale, and Swindon Town, their stadium was called the County Ground. These two stadiums were actually used as prisoner of war camps during World War II. So any prisoners that were captured by the Allied forces, some of them were taken back to the UK and held in these two stadiums as prisoners of war. And finally, the last stadium that I'll come to is Exeter City, and their stadium was called St James's Park. And this didn't really take place until later on in the war. But when the US decided to join and help the Allied forces, St James's Park was actually used by the US as a camp and a training base for their soldiers before entering the European front.